The story of the Nativity in art first appeared in the 4th century. Images of Jesus' birth were etched onto Christian sarcophagi, often found in catacombs. The same figures were repeated: Mary seated or lying down with Jesus in a basket or on her lap, the Magi presenting gifts, the ox and the ass. The earliest images or icons of the Nativity are narrative representations and considered as Byzantine art. Artists from this period were less concerned with realism than telling a story so that the faithful could venerate them.
The earliest images of the Nativity we have are sort of narrative representations in what we would call Byzantine art. The earliest I've seen, maybe they're earlier, but the earliest I've seen is 6th century. But as early at least as that, this, you call it that, an icon, but it's a narrative icon. It's not just one image, it's several figures that recount a story. Now, since the early Christians were so enthralled with the story of the Nativity, they had the Gospels. They also had the proto-Gospels of James, that is, the apocryphal Gospels, that were not recognized by the church. But they said, well, nothing stops us from adding those stories into the Nativity scene as it is represented, right? And so what happens is the earliest nativity scenes show central images that we know from the Gospels, but a lot of other little figures that are in these apocryphal Gospels, especially the Proto-Gospel of St. James, right? And the Proto-Gospel of St. James tries to emphasize a lot the perpetual virginity of Our Lady. And what they show, for example, is the story in this Proto-Gospel of Salome and the midwife. And you'll see the child being born next to Jesus, next to Mary and Joseph. He's in a little basket, and or sometimes it even appears, it looks even like a little, like a tomb, harking forward, to the death of Jesus. But Salome and the midwife are washing the child. There's a story about Salome. She is the one who was the mother of James and John, right? But at that time she doubted. There's a story in there that says that she had a withered hand, and that an angel would have told her, go and touch the child. Go and touch the child. And she touches the child and is miraculously healed. And then that's where she believes, you see. So that image of those two midwives are integrated in the narrative scene, and you see them repeated over and over and over, well into the 16th century, 17th, even 17th century. There's another figure that stays there, of course, that is central, and that is Joseph. But he's not together with Our Lady. And notice Our Lady is lying down in a bed, right? She's lying down, as would be normal for a woman who has just given birth, right? She's lying down. And she's kind of recuperating. And Joseph is just outside of the cave, and the cave looks very jagged to underline the hostile world that the Lord came into with no place to rest his head. But Joseph is always shown with his head on his hand, and that signifies his dream, his doubts, his anguish in front of seeing Our Lady pregnant. But there's a figure that is repeated always in these narratives, or these narrative representations, which is a kind of a funny-looking, hairy guy. He looks like he's got a funny suit on, and he's pointing to Joseph, and that is the devil. Because in this narrative, or in these proto-gospels, there's a story where the devil appears to Joseph, and the devil tells him, how can he be God? If he's just a little baby, he can't be God. Why believe him? And Joseph overcomes that threat, if you like, that temptation of the devil, right? And then as you go up, you see the shepherds, of course, you see the Magi coming in the distance, all represented in one little, icon. And then above, way above, you see, of course, the light coming down in usually one single beam of light, referring to the moment of Christ's birth and the star the Magi saw in the distance.
With the Nativity, we see a basic formula. Mary next to the child Jesus, Joseph off to the side with the devil, the ox and the ass, the midwives, and of course the Magi and the angels. Despite a few variations, this formula is repeated for many centuries until St. Bridget's great vision of the Nativity in the 14th century.